Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for The Invisible Man. And what The Invisible Man is essentially about is we center on the character of Cecilia, and basically for the past few years, she has been in an extremely abusive and toxic relationship with this guy, Adrian, and things are just not going great at all. But finally, one night, she does end up leaving him, and you cut back to, we cut back to a year later, and basically, she finds out that Adrian has allegedly killed himself. You know, now he's gone for her, and she finally feels free. That is until, as things progress, she starts to realize that a part of Adrian is still very much with her. She believes that he is still alive in a way that nobody else can see, but that his spirit is still very much out there and is clearly trying to ruin her life every attempt that he can, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, The Invisible Man overall, I'm going to be honest, I was not that excited for this film. And the main reason is because it was a part of the Dark universe, which I just really have not been too keen on very much at all. I have not really liked the direction that they've been going in, whether it was the ridiculousness of I, Frankenstein or the action movie roots of The Mummy. This is just not a universe that I felt was very well planned at all. It very much seemed like just another attempt to be like the MCU or something like that, and I just was never really for it. And the trailers for this film, not the latest one, because the latest trailer was actually really good. I finally saw that trailer, you know, after I'd seen this movie, and actually is a really good trailer, but the first trailer, one, I would get it constantly, but also because of the fact that it just in general did not really excite me. It looked like a very generic horror film, and it just didn't really seem like it was going to do anything all that different, so I just didn't really have the highest hopes for this film, but I tried to keep an open mind because of the talent. I love Elisabeth Moss. I especially have really come to respect Leigh Whanell as a director, and because of that, I should have known. I really should have known, because coming out of this, I am blown away by how good The Invisible Man really was. What we have here is nothing short of the best film that I have seen so far this year. And, you know, considering just how terrible the year for horror has been, this is the film that has come to make everything right again in horror. And, it is just such a great feeling. This is such a tense and terrifying experience that is easily one of the best of its kind in a very long time. And we're going to get into that for many reasons. But, of course, we first have to talk about the cast. And when it comes to this movie, there's a lot of things that I felt like it needed to succeed, and the cast was absolutely one of them. I mean, this is a film that is very much focused on its characters. It is very much focused on its talent, and especially in its lead performance, you need someone to really anchor this. You need someone to really sell what's going on, and thankfully, Elisabeth Moss fucking nails it here. She is remarkable in this movie. I absolutely loved everything that she was doing in this film. And look, Elisabeth Moss is already an actress that I hold to a very high standard. I'm already expecting nothing but greatness from her. She's a fantastic actress for sure. But this has to be in the top half of her performances, because just the levels of emotion that she was willing to go here, the levels of anxiety that she was willing to go for here. I mean, she does not hold back at all. She perfectly shows just how, just the franticness of this character. Cecile is someone that has been very much abused, and you can see the impact that it has had on her. She feels very closed off. She never feels satisfied. She always feels like something is coming after her. And you can really see how it had this long effect on her. This effect that she has wanted to talk about for a very long time, but has not really been able to verbalize about this until now. And I thought Moss just absolutely killed it in this role. I loved everything that she was really doing here. She really sinks her teeth into this character, really transforming into who Cecilia really was, and it's easily one of her best performances yet. And recently, we've had a slew of just really great performances in horror films from actresses, and I would definitely put this on the level of like a Toni Collette or Lupita Nyong'o. Absolutely deserves to be in that conversation, because she just absolutely killed it here, and I think completely just anchors this entire film. Now, as far as the rest of the cast goes, I think everyone does do a really strong job here for sure. Both Aldis Hodge and Storm Reid do a really good job at playing the friends of Cecilia's character. Aldis Hodge especially, he's very patient with her. He really cares about her. He wants to help her through this situation. But at the same time, there are things that she's doing that is a risk to him. So he has to really be careful with the way he handles it. And I thought Hodge did such a great job. Storm Reid also gives a really strong performance, always impressing me, but this is probably one of her most impressive performances as well. The relationship she has with Moss, I thought, was definitely very well handled for sure. I really like Michael Dorman in this movie. I thought he was very strong. Harriet Dyer as her sister was really good. And then Oliver Jackson-Cohen, even though he's not in the movie that much, understandably, because most of the movie he is invisible, of course, does a really great job at playing this guy that is so twisted and evil in that way, and is always very much, gaslighting her into thinking a certain way, and he just does such a great job at showing just how manipulative this guy really is. It feels very real. It never feels like he is playing a character. It feels like if someone was in this situation, this is exactly how this character would act. This is exactly how this would all go, and I just thought he did such a fantastic job here for sure. Everyone here was phenomenal acting-wise. But now we got to get to the directing and the writing here, because holy shit. I mean, look, Leigh Whanell is a director I already respected a lot. Both of his films, Upgrade and Insidious Chapter 3, are films that I've enjoyed quite a bit, and I think he's done a really good job with the horror and action of it all. But what he's able to do in this film is truly incredible. I mean, his directing in this film is so good, mainly because of just how just darkly realistic this whole film really does feel. Nothing about this movie feels like, it's been Hollywoodized. Nothing about it feels sugar-coated. This is pure, unadulterated horror. It's the exact kind of horror that I want to see. The kind of horror that just really is going to speak to people. Maybe even hit a little too close to home. Because when you have a character like Cecilia, who is in such a terrible relationship and has been abused constantly, I mean, you're just as on edge as she is throughout this film. I think even if you aren't like Cecilia, you still are going to feel just as on edge, because you totally understand what Whanell is trying to do here. He really does a great job of trying to make this feel as real as possible. He never goes too far. It's always just so perfectly handled in that way. He channels it very well, and he knows how to make it scary. He doesn't rely on just cheap jump scares. He really knows just the central concept itself is enough to add some scares in there, and I just cannot get over how good his directing really was here, and I thought he did such a great job directing-wise. But the writing here as well is also just fantastic. I mean, the character of Cecilia is so well realized in this film, because she is very much a strong character. She's been trying to get out of this relationship for a while, but because of how controlling Adrian really was, she wasn't really able to do that, and now she's recently gotten out of it. But it also is a perfect example of how even when you've left a relationship, that effect, that torment, it doesn't just leave you. It sticks with you, and it haunts you, and that's exactly what's happening to Cecilia here. She is trying to get back to a semblance of a normal life. She wants to have a good relationship with, Aldis Hodge, who plays her best friend. She wants to have a good relationship with her sister. She wants to be able to go further, but Adrian is still very much haunting her in that way. And I thought that they did an excellent job really portraying just the sheer terror of that whole concept, and especially the fact that Cecilia herself, this really starts to mess with her psychologically. I mean, like I said, Adrian's whole goal here throughout this movie is to make her feel like she is insane. Everyone around her just thinks that she is losing it. I mean, if I were to tell you that there is this person that died, that their spirit is still here, they're still haunting me, certain things fall, like they're the reason that happened, you'd think I'm batshit. You probably would. And that's exactly what's going on with Cecilia here. Nobody is believing her, and it really is pushing her over the edge. And you really do feel for her because you know exactly what's going on. The film doesn't try to hide it at all. And I like that. I like the film doesn't try to make a mystery out of it of like, is she actually seeing this stuff or not? No, we can tell firsthand what is really going on here. And I just think the writing is so spectacular in that way. And what the film is going to do for people who were in abusive relationships, I think is very important. I think this film is a must watch for anyone that has ever felt like they were in a relationship like this, or anyone who felt like they were gaslit or anything like that. I think even beyond abusive relationship, if you've ever felt used, or you've ever felt like someone's playing you, or you've had some sort of a or there's a person in your life that has just had this deep traumatic effect on you that you cannot move past, this is a must-see. You have to see it for that very reason alone, and I think that is what's so great about the writing here. Is just such a great screenplay in that way, and again, the character of Cecilia is just so well realized from the beginning, but the horror is what really impressed me with this film. This movie is not concerned about just little jump scares here and there, or just showing things to you. It's a horror in the sense that is one that is going to haunt you for a while. In fact, watching this movie, I think a lot of people are going to be very much scared by it. It's going to have a long-lasting impact on you. I think it is actually scarier than the original film. The original film, I'm not going to compare to a lot in this video because it is understandably very different. That film is much more straightforward in terms of horror. This one's going for something far more psychological, and I really did appreciate that here. I really did appreciate that this film wasn't afraid to go into some really different directions in terms of horror, and I think they did a really great job with the writing here, where the film ends up going, just the message that it has about abuse and things like that. I think is just so well realized throughout the movie, and it's definitely one of the things that made me connect with it, I think, as much as it did. There's a scene with Cecilia very early on where she is like recounting everything that Adrian did to her. And one, I mean, that should be like, that alone is like why Elisabeth Moss is so good in this movie. But also, it just felt so real in that way. It felt like if I were to encounter someone who had been through abuse, this is how they would go about it. This is how they would discuss it. And I just really applaud Whanell for going here. He didn't try to hide anything in that way. He really does a great job of, portraying these people as strongly as he can, but also not trying to, not trying to hide their trauma in that way. And I really do think he did an excellent job with that here, writing-wise. I mean, so much of this movie had me so on edge in terms of tension, and there were so many moments where I had chills down my spine. I was so glued to what was going on, and I really do attest that to just how well written this whole thing really was. I mean, from the first scene alone, which I have to say is one of the best first scenes in a horror film that I've seen in quite a bit. I mean, they really do not take any time, they do not waste any time in showing you just how destructive this relationship really was. And it's absolutely horrifying to witness, and I thought they did such a fantastic job with that here. And without spoiling anything, when it's eventually revealed, like, what's actually going on, I thought the film got even more intense because it was not at all where I was expecting it to go, but it definitely was the right place for this film to go, for sure. I think that it really helped convey the message very well, and I just really loved where they ended up going with the story here was not at all what I was expecting. But I think it has a lot to say about just the power that, you know, someone can have over the person that they've abused. And that's something you really do feel throughout this entire movie, is that even with Adrian seemingly dead, he still holds a lot of power over Cecile. He still has this ownership towards her. And you really do feel that throughout the movie, and it's very terrifying to think about. And I think that alone is what makes it so scary in that way, for sure. But something else I'm very happy about when it comes to this movie is what it's trying to do with the Dark Universe, which is jack shit, basically. It doesn't really care that much about starting a universe. It just happens to be in one. This should have been the approach from the beginning. I mean, you look at the Universal Monsters films, like the older ones, they're not concerned about establishing a universe. They're just concerned about telling a good story. And that's exactly what movies like this need to do. They need to focus on telling a good story first. This film is trying to tell a standalone, character-driven story. It's not trying to establish a wider universe. It doesn't have fucking Russell Crowe coming in for no reason to, you know, to be Dr. Jekyll and go on this long monologue because we got to set up his movie. It's not concerned about that, and it's just so refreshing to see. It's so great to see a movie that is just trying to be a great standalone horror film, and I really did love seeing that here for sure. But the cinematography is the other thing I think that really does elevate this film for me, because what it's able to do, the cinematography is part of the reason this film is so scary, because it's not in terms of jump scares. The film will linger on things, and the way it goes about the whole Invisible Man, something as simple as just a, you know, kitchen is suddenly on fire, you know, this pot is on fire, and we don't know what caused it, or a certain piece of, you know, a certain article of clothing has been moved off of Cecilia's closet, you know, things like that. Just little things like that it starts with, and then it starts to transition into far bigger things. But just from that alone, we are locked in. We are absolutely terrified as to what could possibly be going on there, and it's just so well filmed in that way. There's so many amazing shots in this movie, so many shots that had me on edge, and a lot of it is just what we don't see. It's not so much what we do see, it's what we can't see. That's what's so terrifying about it, is the actual presence of the Invisible Man. For the first half of the movie, they do keep it largely unknown as to what's going on. They do eventually reveal more of what's happening, but, you know, prior to that, that's when I think the movie is at its scariest, is when we don't actually know what's happening, and I think they did such a fantastic job with that for sure. But again, just certain ways shots are done. There's this one scene in a restaurant especially that I don't think anyone is going to forget after they've seen it. It had my jaw on the floor. I could not believe where they were going, and a lot of that really is due. Yes, the writing is a big part of that, but the cinematography is one of the best things about this entire movie. It's just absolute perfection all around. Same with the score. Benjamin Wallfisch, I have to say, he really is starting to become one of my favorite composers when it comes to horror, whether it's his score in It or A Cure for Wellness. And this film very much is reminiscent of that, except it's far more propulsive, it's far more just insane, it's incredibly riveting. It's a score that just completely keeps you invested into what's going on, and he just did such a fantastic job with it. And similar to Leigh Whanell, he's absolutely going to be on my radar moving forward. Whenever Benjamin Wallfisch is doing a score for a movie, I will absolutely be looking out for, because I think he is just such a fantastic composer and just really knows how to get your blood pumping. He really knows how to just completely put you into a scene and just scare the living shit out of you. He does a really great job with that here, and I just really loved his score throughout this movie. And also, I have to say, the sound design to this movie is absolutely incredible. I saw this in IMAX, and I would highly encourage all of you to do so as well, because it really just accentuates the suspense and just the unsettling feel of this entire thing. I mean, just the way it was done was so masterfully handled. Just little things like just sounds you would hear. I thought they did such an incredible job with, and I would definitely recommend, seeing this in the biggest theater possible, because you are going to get a much bigger experience away. And I think it's really cool that a horror movie like this that doesn't rely on cheap jump scares and isn't a part of a major franchise has gotten this kind of big release. It's really cool to see, and it definitely pays off for sure. And it's definitely one of the best things about this movie. There's a lot to really love about it, but the sound design, I think, only adds to just how great of this film is in terms of scares. The editing, I heard a lot of people say that this film goes through a bit of a lull in its second act, and honestly, I never really felt that. I was invested the entire time. I never really felt like there was anything that the film wasn't delivering on. I felt like the pacing was pretty great throughout this, and I was very much invested throughout everything that was going on. There wasn't really a dull moment in this film for me, and I was very impressed by that. So again, there's so much I love about this film. I'm really singing its praises. I mean, the ending as well is just so crazy, but so utterly satisfying in that way, and I thought they did such a fantastic job with that. So again, there's so much I'm loving about this film. I'm really singing its praises in that way, between its star power and, all the production stuff. So is there anything that really does bring it down? Well, I do have just one flaw with it that I do think holds it back from being an utter masterpiece in that way, and that is Cecilia's sister. Not so much the actress, because like I said, I did think Harriet Dyer was very strong in the role. I just felt the character overall, there wasn't enough of her. We get an idea that these two aren't all that close, and that, Cecilia's sister's trying to do what she can to help her. But where they end up going with her, I felt like it could have been a little bit more earned, and considering what ends up happening to this character, I feel like they should have spent a little bit more time on that relationship, so when what ends up happening does happen, it's just a little bit more impactful overall. But other than that, I really can't complain too much about this movie. This is absolutely everything I want to see in horror. It's raw, it doesn't hold back, it's very realistic in that way. The way it gets into what someone who's been through abuse really does go through, the full extent of it all, is terrifying. Elisabeth Moss is absolutely spectacular here. It's got some beautiful cinematography, some haunting imagery in that way, and it's a film that I was just very impressed by. It's definitely one of the scariest films that I've seen in a very long time as well. I was very much on edge throughout it, and I really do think moving forward, this is the film that is going to propel Leigh Whanell forward. I adored his work in Upgrade for sure, but after this, I am putting blind faith in him pretty much. Anything that he does, I will be there day one. I cannot wait to see what he's going to do moving forward, and it's pretty crazy to me how something like the Dark Universe that was once just kind of a pipe dream and something that we all just kind of laughed at has propelled into something like this. How this is the thing that gets Universal back on the right track. Because Universal's been struggling for a while, as we know, but this is really their first film in a while that I cannot recommend enough. That is absolutely worth seeing. It is definitely, I think if this film is as successful as I hope it's going to be, which it already is doing really well, I could very much see this film being even more of a classic than the original, just because of how relevant it's going to be for people, how relatable the film is going to be, how terrifying it really is, and just how this whole, cinematic universe overall, it went from something that was trying to be like the MCU to something that has become far more personal, something that has become far more smaller scale in that way, and it's succeeded, and how great is that to really see? We rarely get to see something like that happen, and that is just so amazing to behold. Guys, The Invisible Man is absolutely incredible. This film really, really blew me away. Absolutely one of the most terrifying things I've seen in a while, and I'm definitely going to give The Invisible Man overall an A. It feels so good to love a film as much as I do this one. It's been a while since I've seen this great of a movie, but this really did bring things back, and I think this year is finally looking up. I've been very skeptical with how 2020 is going to go. I have to say, I've seen a few good ones, but I've been very skeptical. This film, absolutely, I'm a little bit more hopeful now. I'm more hopeful that good things are to come in 2020, and I hope that is the case, especially for horror, because this is definitely far closer to what I want to see for sure. But either way, guys, if my review, The Invisible Man, the most guys saw this movie overall, their true thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.